Hi, so I'm John Harris. I'm the production manager here at Henley Festival. The interesting thing about Henley is the production management job is quite wide-ranging. So as well as looking after all the stages and the show infrastructure, we're also looking after the restaurants and bars and all of that side of things as well. So it's quite a wide-ranging job. I've been production managing here since 2011, back in the 90s. I was on the lighting crew, so when I started here in 2011, at least I knew the site. A lot has changed since 2011. In 2011, when we started, we were still doing a lot of classical music, and now predominantly we're doing bands like we're doing this year. So we take the site over from Regatta at 8:30 on the Sunday night. Regatta runs the week before us. They have a build that starts in April when they build all the main structures, the marquees. We have a grandstand that they use as their members' grandstand that we convert into a restaurant. We take their tiering and put boxes on it so that we can fit a restaurant on it. We use another one of their grandstands as our main auditorium grandstand. But we start at 8:30 on Sunday evening, and by the time we open at 6 o'clock on Wednesday evening, we've built a stage in the river. We've added new structures, we've adapted the structures that were there, and that's how we get out of them into us. And if it's a nice sunny year, like this year's been a sunny year, it's hard work, but it's doable. When it rains, it's very unpleasant. The land is owned by Regatta. The lawns are beautifully maintained, and therefore throughout the year, when they build Regatta, they carry everything in by hand, which is part of the reason that they start earlier in the year. With the Regatta build, you can't drive a single vehicle on site. If it's very, very dry, and our ground staff allow us, we can drive gators on site. We can't drive any trucks on site. As soon as it gets wet, you can't even drive gators on site. You can't have trolleys on site because we just carve up the lawns, and the lawns will never recover. It's like trying to do a build on the Wimbledon centre court. With our 72-hour build, if the weather's good, we just make the deadline. We haven't had a wet year since 2012. At the moment, our infrastructure is so large that in a wet year what we'd have to do on the Wednesday night is make decisions about things that we're not going to have. So we would have to open in a reduced status. The other thing we have to do is install lots of pedestrian trackway, because as soon as the ground starts getting muddy, people can't move across it. And obviously one of the things about Henley is because it's a black tie event, people are in their nice suits and ladies are in their nice heels and dresses, so they can't just stick their wellies on. The floating stage had traditionally, for the last 20 odd years, sat on scaffolding on the riverbed. What's been happening to the riverbed is it's been washing away, but also what's happened, because the shows that we're now taking in are much bigger, they're arena touring shows, we needed a much bigger stage. So we've taken both bits of challenge and we've now put the stage on a floating pontoon. Northern Pontoon have installed a pontoon for us. What we do is we bring it in upstream by the bridge overnight on Sunday night, we tow it into position, and then ESG come in and build an LT stage which allows us to have straight trusses. For Pet Shop Boys last night we had a kinesis system, we had kabuki drops, it was a full installed arena show which we wouldn't have been able to do on our own stage. On our old stage we've also got considerably better weight loading on the legs, and it's gone well. There are still some tweaks we can do to it. We can't go deeper into the river because it goes through the navigation and there are boats constantly going up and down behind the stage, but the one thing we can do is go wider. The benefits of going wider is there's extreme seating either side, and also we're desperate for storage space on stage, because when an arena show comes in, they're used to just being able to have their crates and boxes on the side of stage. They start their load out as the show is going through, so as a piece of set is finished with, comes off into the wings or upstage, and they're able to crate it up, so that allows them to do a much faster get out. Having said that, Pet Shop Boys came down at 11 o'clock last night and they were packed up 2 40-footers by 2:15, and that's having walked everything up the towpath, and they are on their way to Barcelona. For the first time this year we've been able to have early evening acts on. We tend to regard them as early evening acts rather than support acts. We're now in a position to do that better because we can hang a mid-stage drape to have the upstage show hidden behind it. However, we still don't have space to do rolling risers, so what we've done this year is we've supplied the backline for all the early evening acts. We've worked through with them about what everybody needs, so every day during the daytime we get their backline on stage so that when they're ready it's just a matter of carrying things into position, we can't even fit a drum riser on, so what we do is just carry the drum kits into position. One of the things about this is there's two parts of the regatta site. There's Stewart's enclosure and then there's the public enclosure or regatta enclosure, and what we do is extend into the regatta enclosure and we install 24 metre Spiegel Tent, which last year when we did it came in two 40-foot trucks. This year they managed to cram the entire tent into one 40-foot truck. One of our problems last year, which we've dealt with a lot in our traffic systems, is the entire catering operation from regatta moves out as we're moving our entire catering operation and production in. So we rearranged our schedule and went on to a much deeper 24-hour working so that we could allow compass time for them to move out of sight. But anything that we're loading in at the regatta enclosure end comes face to face with a massive catering operation from regatta trying to move out. So we've introduced a very strict, disciplined traffic system, which has been moderately successful, and we're still working on it to improve how that works. One of the reasons that we've looked at our catering operation is that, like all events and festivals, we have to maximise our profit, so we're constantly looking at all our suppliers and contractors and arrangements, re-tendering, and last year when we re-tendered for catering, the other options available to us generated a better income for us than in the compass model. So although it causes us practical issues and challenges, it has a financial benefit to the festival. 30 odd years ago, regatta and some people in Henley saw an opportunity that, with all the infrastructure that goes into regatta, that adding a music festival to the end of the regatta week would be a benefit to everybody, and it still is, because we still have a short period of time to get from one thing to another. We end up with a much bigger infrastructure than we would be able to build ourselves. We have the huge benefit of being on a site with a fantastic view across the river. Regatta are very supportive of the festival. They do as much for us as they can. Obviously regatta is their priority, and we understand that, and we try and make it as easy for them and create as little impact on regatta as we possibly can. It's a good relationship that we have with them. It's great that they help us out so much. It makes what we do a lot easier. So last year we decided, for the first year for many years, to have a big top out in the car park. We used it partly because our stage at that point wasn't able to take early evening acts and late evening acts, so we used it as a second music stage. We also had a video relay across from the main stage, so that particularly if it had rained, there was places under cover. We could get 2,000 people in the big top. One of the challenges with it, the issues with it, is because it doesn't feel part of the enclosure, because it's in the car park. There wasn't enough connection between the festival and the big top area, and really, in a question of finances, the extra money we would have had to invest to make that linkage work made it not practical to do for this year. It's something we'd revisit every year. We work on new ideas and new things to keep the festival changing. Our audience are very loyal. They come back every year, and therefore if we can give them a different experience but with the same feeling, then we feel that's a positive. When we first started talking to Ronnie Scott's about having the Ronnie Scott's venue on site, we looked at recreating the London venue so that the experience was exactly the same. We then decided that actually the better thing to do was to use a Spiegel tent. It has a nice booth structure. It comes from a company in Holland called Van Rosselen. I work with them on this and on other festivals. They do a lot of Spiegel tents across the UK during the year. It's all built by hand. They have no forklift telehandler access into it. It comes with their Dutch crew, are very experienced putting it together, but it is steel, single frame, and they have to carry in every piece by hand. What we did this year is we started them 4 hours later to allow catering time to clear. Luckily, because it's at the far end of site, once we've got their truck into position, we're then able to leave them to their own devices to build it, and they had it finished by 6 o'clock on Tuesday evening. We're very lucky when we inherit the site from Regatta that we inherit some of the incumbent suppliers, which includes the ground staff who work on the grounds all year round, WM Events who work as a subcontract to Arena Structures, who do a lot of the changes in the venues. We're able to do our pre-planning with them. They know what the regatta changes are, so we can integrate the regatta changes into what we're going to do. There is no reason why regatta should leave a structure as it is for regatta just because we've always had it in a certain way. So our incumbent suppliers are very strong for us, and it's a massive benefit for us. The only downside of it is I have to be bilingual and be able to speak in regatta names and also in festival names. In addition to our incumbent suppliers who we have through the regatta, we also bring in obviously the production people. So we PRG do our lighting, Blackout do our rigging, RG Jones do our sound, ESG build the stage. There's many other sort of smaller subcontractors working on it around in site. This year, for the first year, we decided to radically change the way we do the power distribution on site. So for regatta SSE install installation style electrics into all the venues. We've decided that we would leave that installation alone, and we now install a plug and play system. So a company called Bubbles Lighting comes in and installs a much more traditional festival style plug and play system, which is much quicker for us on the turnaround. As we're looking at changes for next year, one of the things that we've discovered about the stage and the stage pontoon is that the front PA is quite heavy, and it's caused as a very slight rake on stage, so we're much more like a Victorian theatre currently. We're slightly more careful with flight cases going forward. So one of our ideas is that we're going to push the masts that are holding the roof up slightly further back to rebalance the weight on the pontoons. The way we balance the weight on the pontoons at the moment is we have IBC tanks on the back of the stage. We just keep filling them with water so that the back go down, the front rises up. There will be advantages to pushing the legs back. It'll improve our sightlines slightly, and it'll also rebalance the weight. And we can't be many years off needing to have side of stage IMAGs as more and more shows need it, and as our audience gets wider. When we move in, there is already a grandstand behind us, which is 2,072 seats. What happens on Tuesday night, the trackway which we've installed for the stage build to allow us to bring the crane in to lift the stage masts on comes up, and as that comes up, arena seating come in, and pretty much as a piece of trackway comes up, a section of seating goes down, which gives us another 2,000 seats on the lawn, which allows us to divide up the pricing structure so that the centre seats are sold at a premium rate and the outer seats, which have slightly less view, are sold at a more reasonable price. And on the rest of our pricing structure, we have a general admission price, which allows people access to the site. They can't actually sit in the arena, but they can see a bit of the stage. We encourage people to understand that it's not about seeing the show, but there's multiple other venues that they can see. So we bring in live trackway to do both barriers and fencing. We bring them in. There's no trackway that goes in for regatta. The way the regatta works, they don't have trackway on the grass. It's much more important to them, the condition of the grass, when we're in regatta or they're in regatta. We just practically can't build what we can. So live do all our fencing, our LD20. There's 164 panels of K-panel that go down to take the crane weight. But obviously we have to get that up on Tuesday night so that we can get the seating down, so that we can open, and the relentless overnight calls. So we worked with Eve before. We'd worked with Eve for a few years. So when Eve and Lion merged together, we carried on working with them. And we kept the same economics of the contract. Because it's slightly difficult to work through, it's a slightly complicated install, there's a benefit to us to using a company who knows it. Many of the Eve staff are still with us, so they understand how the process works. Because we're on such a short timeline, if trackway didn't turn up or somebody laid it wrong, we would then lose our entire build, we'd lose our first show. So oddly, trackway is one of our most important elements, and it's the one thing that can't go wrong.
Stewart Collins, the artistic director of the Henley Festival, a job I've been doing now for goodness knows 26 years out of the festival's 35. So I know this lawn which we're standing on very well. The thing I find in my job is getting to know the agents, and then also making sure they know who we've had at the festival, and also making sure that people who've been at the festival talk about it. So the great thing about someone like Elton John is that the fact you've had him makes a great deal of difference when you talk to somebody else. So, if they don't know the festival, and that's not so much the case now, unfortunately, we're sort of pretty much on the map, which is a great thing. But now when we talk to people, but probably American agents who are less familiar with the festival, we can say, well, yeah, of course, Elton John was here last year, Lionel Richie, all that sort of thing. And then they sit up and listen because they know those are big guys, those are the big players. And so it counts. And actually, we now have that wonderful accolade of having received a national award, the National Festivals Award for having Headline Act of the Year. So again, that really puts us up where we want to be. So we can talk to the guys like the Pet Shop Boys, as we did yesterday, who may not have thought we could fit their show, which is fascinating because they thought we couldn't possibly stage it because of the size of the event. We could. We were able to talk to them. We were talk to the agent, and the agent was aware through the connections, through our history, that these guys can do that. Come on, boys, you should be on there. The question of capacity is a fascinating one because obviously this is a big site. If you come to the Henley Regatta, you might find 10, 15,000 people here because it's a long site. But of course, for our events, we have to suddenly channel them into a very small area. And with Elton John, we increased capacity, partly because we needed to make the money, but also because we felt it was the demand was definitely there, and we needed to push it. We wanted to accommodate as many as we could. There came a point on the night where we realised maybe that's why we didn't have that size capacity in the past. We managed. No one died, no one fell in the river. But for this year, we thought, well, look, that actually, for an event like this, where people come to have a certain set of to feel good, to walk around and breathe the air, see the sun, look at the sculpture, sup a glass of champagne, and you don't want to be jostling. You actually want to have a bit of space. And so we pulled the capacity back this year very deliberately because however successful that night had been, and it was, we just felt it was pushing the envelope a bit too much in terms of numbers. So the numbers we topped out at this year about 1,000 less, which of course has a financial impact, and we've had to sort of work that out. But I think that the smaller capacity last night we were completely sold out, and it felt fine. And actually, some people said, there was plenty of room to breathe, and I think that's a key thing. We obviously want to aim as high as we can year after year. So I don't think there's any sense that after Elton John we can sort of relax and go back to the bootleg Beatles, who we love, but wouldn't play the festival headline stage anymore because we've moved on. I think we have to think very hard, like any festival does. We have to think extremely hard about who we do book because, band inflation has been massive in recent years. So bands we were talking to 4 or 5 years ago who were sort of nice, middling £50,000-£75,000, that numbers have doubled, and we can't double our ticket prices. As we've talked about, we can't double our capacity. So it makes it a very, very serious piece of staring at a piece of paper and working out what you can manage. But we're always determined to have a big headliner. We know they're going to be expensive. We want the audience now expect it. The thing is, you just can't go back, and we wouldn't want to anyway. So yes, I mean, as with everybody, we have to think about the numbers very, very hard, and ticket prices, capacity, and all that. But I think we've come out with a reasonably sensible balance this year, which means we've got great sort of well-known headliners. We haven't got a sort of stratospheric Elton John this time out, but that doesn't happen very often. And that we managed it. We did it really well. We'd do it again, but that's the way the cookie crumbles. On 2 or 3 occasions, yes, the artists have very much been on tours where they want to play smaller venues. When Sting came a few years back, he was definitely on a 5,000 capacity kind of venue tour, and he really wanted to do that. But the impact of when you arrive here it is pretty special on all the artists, on all the managements. Literally, just before we spoke, I welcomed Shaka Khan's guys, and they say, "Wow, the setup's terrific." It's unusual. And actually backstage before they go on, they're all sort of just looking at the boats going past on the river, and I think that's really memorable. I think obviously like every festival director is going to say my festival's amazing, it's got so many unique factors, it's brilliant, and that's absolutely the case. But when you're standing on the back of our floating stage looking at the river, seeing the boats going past, and they're all sort of hooting their hooters at the end of the shows and coming along to sort of get a listen to the music from behind, it's very, very special, and the bands appreciate that. So I think we're always going to have some kind of sort of unique appeal. The more we carry on, the reputation of the festival grows. I think it's not going to become easier to book bands, but it's easier to talk to people, and I think the fact we are quite unusual. We look after people very well. Our technical side is brilliantly delivered, and I think that counts for a lot. I think our general admission ticket, as we've called it, has actually been a fantastically useful and effective device, because it's enabled us to increase our capacity whilst we put in arena seats. So the actual arena itself contains 4,400 people, something like that. But then the site, as I said, is much bigger. It means that there's so much else that's going on. Anyway, we're programming other things against the main concert, because actually, if you don't like Shaka Khan, you might very well like Andy Parsons, the comedian. So you'll go into the Comedy Tent, or the Ronnie Scott's guys playing. So the general admission ticket means that even if you don't necessarily like our headliners, you can take all the rest of the festival stuff in. And I think that has changed the nature of the festival in a sense, because everything used to stop for that floating stage headline concert. Now it's a festival like any other festival, that other things are going on. Okay, the majority of people go to the floating stage, but it means the whole site's got life all night now, and I think it's the introduction of that ticket at a good low price. You're still, I think the bottom price this year is 45 quid for a night, which, that's there are probably 15 programmed shows in that. You've got 3 comedy shows, you've got 3 jazz shows, you've got the nightclub, you've got a world music band, you've got 2 young up-and-coming singer-songwriters, you've got a classical, the list goes on, all within that £45 ticket. So I think it's done a lot to bring people who wouldn't otherwise have come, and it's also given us a number of people who can enable us to just program throughout the evening. It's always a question that you ask yourself, where are we in our growth diagram? Where are we on the curve? Obviously, there is nothing in any of my colleagues, myself, that wants to stop us growing. There are things that you have to stand back and think about. We've talked about capacity. We have obviously ticket prices. I think the great joy of this festival has always been the mix. I think we're discovering increasingly that our audience, they don't necessarily come to, like tonight, they're not coming to necessarily because they're automatically Chaka Khan fans. They're Henley Festival fans who decided that this is the night that they want to come. Increasingly, we want Henley Festival fans, and we want to continue sort of expanding the wider offer. And I think we also want to, like this year, we've put in a new bar with a new music space on it and things like that. I just think we want to use this space imaginatively, as differently as we can every year, not to take too many risks, because I talk very optimistically and positively about the festival, and we're in a good place this year. But I know from many colleagues that there are some festivals that are stopping this year. We're losing Cornbury, we're losing Secret Garden Party. It's very, very tough time for smaller festivals, and so I think we're tempering that sort of determination to keep going. Really brilliant top-line artists, a fantastic offer in general, still supporting our charities, because again, that's one of the things that really sets the festival apart in many ways, because of our commitment and our charitable status and our working with various national, local charities. But I think my thing is to bring more of the sort of the unusual variety, more up and coming indie bands, just to keep changing the mix, bring it, but also to keep the quirk factor, to build the quirk factor. At the moment, what we're not doing, that we did a few years back, because we brought other things in their place, is to bring some really of the wonderful outdoor performance that we used to bring in from Europe. We used to have lots of French, Dutch, big-scale outdoor acts doing extraordinary things on the site, so that there was an incredible element of performance as well as music, and I would like to sort of now bring that back in, so that the incredible status now of our music is matched by the incredible status of our supporting programme, and I think we're gradually getting there. But it's a steady process, and against a background of, be careful, lads, this is quite a tense market. We don't have a 5-night ticket. It's not a camping festival, so we have different audiences each night. The purpose of the different headline acts, hopefully, is to draw different audiences. Okay, a lot of people do come back night after night, but yes, someone like Chaka Khan, an older generation artist, if she doesn't mind me saying that, then Jess Glynn, and then Goldie, as we've got again. people thought I was mad booking Goldie, but it's fantastic because there's a younger generation of ticket buyers coming along to that. It doesn't mean they have to be 18-year-olds, they're not, but they're sort of late 20s, early 30s, and that's a great thing because this is a festival that's typically had an audience probably 45 upwards, which is obviously considerably older than the demographic for most festivals. So yeah, I mean, we're slightly up against one of the things we'd like to do every year, and that is to have something that's more classical, one of the sort of the bigger headline classical artists, because that's part of the history of the festival. But it's very hard to find the artists who will sell the tickets. But yes, if I could have a world music night, a jazz night, a classical night, a young rock and roll and a legend rock and roll, that in a sense would be brilliant, but it never works out quite like that. Loading up the floating stage for a headline concert is quite funny because there is no backstage room, basically. Our suite of artist dressing rooms is way down the towpath. So actually we have this really complex operation of sort of timing it so that the artists come from the dressing rooms beyond outside the festival site. Most of them these days actually don't want to be seen at all, so we have to sort of secrete them and get them behind the stage, and then they get there. Obviously everyone knows they're arriving because a blacked out van comes up the towpath. But in the good old days, quite a lot of the artists used to come in an open top car and sort of wave, it was great. There was a lovely sort, and the audience used to cheer, the audience used to stand up. But these days the shows are so sort of engineered that they have big proper starts and they have to be on stage for 3 minutes before while the warm-up music comes in, or the intro music. So it's a bit of an operation getting the artists to the stage, and yeah, it's not a big backstage area, it's a big stage, but no, it's quite entertaining, that bit, as you explain to the incoming touring parties. Yeah, this is how it works. Really? This is how it works.
So looking forward into 2018, now we have this new stage structure, which we will still tweak and change around a bit. It does now allow us to stage artists and acts that we weren't able to stage before, larger artists and acts. So we're going to concentrate on that. We're also going to look at developing outwards to allow more people to enjoy the festival, to also allow more people to enjoy the festival over a greater spread of pricing, so that we don't want to be an exclusive event for an exclusive community. We want to be available to many more people to be able to experience the festival. So the more we can expand and spread out, the more we can do that. There are certain large structures that we wouldn't interfere with. They work very well. The 1,000-seater restaurant is a very popular place. It works well. You get a table for the entire evening. And the Ronnie Scott Spiegel Tent venue, for now, we're happy with. It may be that we choose to do something else. It may be in discussions with Ronnie Scott's that they say, why don't we try a different structure? Some of our opportunities come from bands who we approach or artists who we approach, and then an opportunity presents itself and we look at how we can stage that. 2 years ago we had a show called Lords of Lightning, which is basically two guys standing on top of 6-foot Tesla coils. Obviously we couldn't stage that on the grass, so we built a stage in the river. We did that show in the river. That would never have come about had we not. It was act driven, so we didn't decide we would build a stage in the river. We decided we wanted to do this act. We then worked out how we'd stage it. It's very much led by the performers who we want to bring. We then come up with interesting ways of staging them. We've also got some fantastic sponsors, partners who work with us. So this year we have Volvo, so we have Volvo cars on site, and we work with them a lot to develop their branding and their opportunities. We did with Microsoft yesterday. So the second day of the festival, the day after we'd opened, we cleared the 1,000-seater restaurant at 4 o'clock in the morning, converted it to a conference venue for 1,000 people, installed video screens. We also converted the boat sheds, which are part of the regatta site that we generally don't use, into a changing area, and they had cream teas in the middle of the afternoon, and then they changed into their evening wear. They then came back onto site. While they were doing that, we were converting the 1,000-seater conference venue back into a 1,000-seater restaurant, relaying the tables, putting all the knives and forks back on. And also, because they were having a conference during the day, the chefs couldn't cook because the kitchen's immediately behind the restaurant, so the chefs were then rapidly frying sausages, possibly not sausages.